Hi everyone, welcome back, and this is part 2 of our warm winter onesie. So I am ready. I have one leg made and one sleeve, so I'm going to show you the other. Now technically they are very similar, the legs and the sleeves. The only thing is that we do a little bit of decreasing in the leg part and no decreasing in the sleeve. Other than that, it is pretty much all the same. Okay. So first of all, what we want to do is we're gonna probably look at this and see the full length that we need to have for our onesie from the neck down. Okay, so this is the D1. So you look up the size that you're making. I'm making 3 to 6 months, and it should be approximately 51 centimeters in full length. Okay, so I'm gonna get my measuring tape and I'm gonna place it like this, and I'm under approximately 53 centimeters in length. I can easily make it shorter. I just need to pull up my the end of the sleeve and it shortens up. You can do it even more. Okay, so the thing why we're measuring this right now, okay, is that whatever we have made now, the missing length is going to be the leg. Okay, so I am at approximately 34 centimeters here in length. I need a full length to be 51, so this is going to be the leg. Now the only thing is that you want to leave the last 4 or 5 centimeters to do the ribbing, okay, like this. So if my full length is 51, I'm gonna count, let's say 4 centimeters back. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So up until 47 centimeters. So for 13 centimeters, I will be making the leg in this pattern. The rest is going to be our ribbing. So you just need to leave a little bit of space of the length for this. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, leave me a comment. I will try to explain it in other words. Okay, so now grab your yarn and we are gonna get started on the leg. Okay, so to start, now both are exactly the same. So what we are going to do is make a slip knot, and we shall start right in here, right where we have connected. We have got 2 rows of double crochets. So in either of them, let's say I'll just start right here, pull that out. I'm gonna crochet over that tail. You're gonna chain 1, and this is going to be a single crochet row, so we are going around on the outside of the leg. So what we need is we need to make 1 single crochet into each stitch, and we need to make sure that we end up with an even number of stitches. Now as I have made already one leg, I had 36 single crochets in the first row, so I just need to match it to this one. Okay, so chain 1, and I'm gonna start with single crochets. So 1, I'm gonna go here, make 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and so on. Keep going. I'll see you right here. Okay, so I have 34 single crochets. I need to make 2 more. So I'm going to crochet over that a little bit. So 35 and 36. Now you don't necessarily have to have the same number of stitches as I have. It just has to be an even number. Okay, so 36 single crochets for me, and then you're gonna find the very first stitch, which is right here, and slip stitch into that. We're gonna chain 1 and turn. We're gonna be making the pattern row and it is going to be on the inside. We will be looking at the inside of the leg. Okay, so we're going to chain 1. Now we want to make the first single crochet into the stitch right underneath it. So this one right here, it looks like they are kind of connected. Okay, so you make your single crochet there, and then a cluster in the next stitch, then a single crochet, then a cluster. Now there is a chance that your clusters are not gonna match and with the pattern that we have done before. Now I'm gonna show you in a second. Just go make a few clusters, and then we are going to have a look on the good side of the of our onesie. Okay, so now what you want to do is you look like this. Okay, so I am, you can see my clusters are in between the clusters from before. Okay, so what we want our clusters to be like this, in the same, like underneath each other. Okay, so now my clusters are kind of in between, so it will be very noticeable. Now I'm gonna show you how to fix that. If your clusters are falling correctly, it just literally depends on where you have started, and it's very difficult to say if you started correct or wrong. Okay, so if you have everything is correct here for you, you just keep going, and in the very last stitch right here before closing, you're gonna have a cluster, and you will be all fine. You will be connecting. Now if you have it like me and it's incorrect, you're gonna take it out until that chain 1. Now we need to move our stitches forward, 1 stitch forward. So instead of making that single crochet in that stitch right underneath our chain 1, we're gonna go into the next one. So we're moving 1 stitch forward and single crochet, and then continue with your clusters and single crochet and cluster. Now you only do this in the first row. Once we have our clusters in places, they will always stay there. Okay, we might just have to move them in the first row just to make sure that they are in those lines. Okay, so let me make another one like this, and if I'm gonna have a look right now, you can see that the clusters are underneath. So we just moved 1 stitch forward and they're falling into place. Okay, so continue on until you get to the end of this row. Okay, so finishing this row. Now I have mentioned that if you had your clusters correctly in a line when you have started, you will finish with a cluster in the last stitch. Now if you look where your chain 1 is, so it's right here, it's coming out of this stitch. So this stitch is already taken. Okay, so you should finish right here with a cluster. Now because I had to move 1 stitch forward, I need to make up 1 stitch. So the very last cluster for me goes into that same stitch where the chain 1 is coming out of. It might be a little difficult to see, right? So right here, but it looks like chain 1 is coming out of. So my cluster goes here. You will start the rows with a pattern with a single crochet, and you will finish with a cluster. I really hope that this makes sense. We have if you're not sure how many clusters you should have, you can always, the number of stitches that you had in the single crochet row, so for me it was 36 stitches, you divide that by 2. So for me it would be 36 divided by 2 would be 18. I should have 18 clusters at the end of this row, and I'm quite sure that this is correct. Then you're going to connect into the very first stitch. So this one right here, it might be a little difficult to see. It's probably easier for you when you're looking at your work. So just like that, slip stitch, chain 1 and turn. Now we're going to do a little bit of decreasing in this row. So we make a single crochet right into that stitch underneath the chain 1, so right in front of it. So single crochet. Now the next 2 stitches get 2 single crochets together. So we're gonna go into the next stitch, catch our yarn, pull it out and leave it. We go into the next stitch, catch our yarn, pull it out. We have 3 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. We need to do this one more time. We go into the stitch, into the next stitch, pull our yarn, leave it, go right into the next stitch, pull it out, 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And now we have 2 stitches instead of 4 that we have had. This is our first decrease. Then after that you continue on to the end of the row with 1 single crochet in each stitch, and you will end up with 2 less stitches. So if I had 36, I should have 34 at the end of this row. So your very last single crochet should be in the stitch above a cluster when you finish, or you can count your stitches, whatever is easier for you. Okay, then we're going to connect into that very first stitch on the other side. So slip stitch, chain 1 and turn, single crochet right back into that stitch underneath the chain 1. So single crochet and then cluster, single crochet and cluster. Keep going until you finish this row. Okay, so I have a few stitches left. A cluster, a single crochet, and our very last stitch should be a cluster. And now again, if you look, you would think there might be another stitch, but the chain 1 is coming out of this one, so it's already taken. We start with a single crochet and finish with a cluster. Then connect into the very first stitch with a slip stitch, chain 1 and turn. Now we are going to make another row with a little bit of decreasing, but in the row before we made the decreases in the beginning of this row. This time we're gonna make it at the end of this row, just so our seam where we are connecting would not move to one side, so it stays right in the middle underneath, like at the bottom. Okay, so because if we keep decreasing in one side, that seam is going to move to the side. And one more thing, it's you should, once in a while, you should put it down and make sure that your clusters are aligning, because it will be quite noticeable if they are in between. Okay, so you probably made a mistake somewhere if the clusters are not aligning. Okay, so second row of decreasing. So we chained 1, single crochet right underneath into that very first stitch, and then keep going with 1 single crochet into each stitch until you are gonna have 4 stitches left at the end of this row. I have 4 stitches left to the end of this row. So if you look, so 1, 2, 3 and 4, and I'm gonna crochet together 2 at a time. Okay, so into the 4th last stitch, pull the yarn out and stop, into the next stitch, pull the yarn out, you have 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and one more time, into the next, pull out, leave, into the last one, pull out, 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and connect into the very first stitch with a slip stitch. So at this point I have 32 single crochets left, or 32 stitches. Now I'm gonna do another decrease. The only thing is, if you're not quite sure how many stitches you have, just have a count, okay? Because if you have 30 stitches, you don't want to end up with less than 30 stitches at the with the legs, okay? Because otherwise this part might be a little too small. So if you are at 30 stitches, just do not do any more decreasing, okay? If you have more than 30, I have 32, I will do another decrease. You can have more than 30, but no less than that. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so chain 1 and turn. Start with a single crochet and then cluster and single crochet and cluster, and keep going until you come to the end of this row. My last stitch is a cluster and join into that very first stitch with a slip stitch, chain 1. Now like I said, if you still have more than 30 stitches, we can do our third decrease. If you are at 30, from now on no more decreasing, just one single crochet into each stitch and your clusters back. So one more decreasing for me, single crochet into that very first stitch, and this time again we're gonna do it in the beginning of the row. So into the next stitch, pull out, into the next one, crochet 2 together, and one more time, and that's it. I have 30 stitches and I'm gonna keep that 30 all the way down to the ribbing, okay? So this is our last decrease. Finish that, start your cluster row, and then just keep going until you can see right here, it gives it, those decreases give it a lovely shape. So keep going until you have approximately 4 or 5 centimeters left to the full length of your onesie from the neck down. So like I said, it is 51 centimeters for me. I am at 40, so I need another 11 centimeters to go to the full length, but I'm gonna stop at approximately 46, 47 centimeters and then just finish it off with the ribbing. Okay, so now keep going. I'll see you and we'll start the ribbing together. Okay, so I'm finishing my leg, and I finished on a single crochet row, and I'm approximately, so I'm at 47 centimeters in length. I need another approximately 4 centimeters to finish my full length. So the rest is the ribbing. So it is a slip stitch ribbing. Now we are going to make 18 chains, and we're gonna have 17 slip stitches for the ribbing. Now one thing that I can say, that if you do not like it the way it is, you can make perhaps something like 9 chains, and you're just gonna have this kind of finishing. It looks nice as well, but it doesn't have the exact same look like this. I prefer this, so I'm going to make a longer chain. So again, remember, there is a single crochet row where I have finished. Now after the slip stitch, I am just going to chain 18. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Okay, so you always chain 1 extra, then you are going to have your slip stitches. Now skip the first chain into the second chain, make a slip stitch, and into the next one, and all the way down. And one last one. Now, if you are not used to making this kind of ribbing, what I can say is grab a stitch marker, and when you finish your very last stitch on going down, you just put a stitch marker in that stitch, in the full stitch, just like that. It will be easier to find the first stitch when we start the next row. So once you make all your slip stitches, you're going to slip stitch right into the first stitch underneath the chain 1, and one more slip stitch into the next stitch, so 2 slip stitches, and then you're going to turn. Now you need to skip those 2 slip stitches that you just made to connect to your onesie. Okay, so skip the first 2, and into the third we start a back loop slip stitch. So as you can see, I have a stitch marker right here, or you just count 1, 2, and 3 into the back loop, make a slip stitch. I'm going to take that out, and then continue with back loop slip stitches all the way up. Again, you should have the same number, which is 17 slip stitches. So keep going, I'll see you at the top. I have 1 stitch left into the back loop, slip stitch, chain 1, and turn. We're gonna skip that very first chain that we have just made and into the back loop of the next stitch, slip stitch down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Again, if you need to, put your stitch marker into that very last stitch that you have just made, and then 2 slip stitches to the bottom of the leg. So from now on you use the stitches that are not used. Okay, so you can see this one is used. Right into the next one, slip stitch 1, and right into the next one, slip stitch 2. Turn. Again, you skip the first 2 slip stitches that you have just made, yarn in between your hook and work, and into the third stitch into the back loop, slip stitch. Take that out, and just like that we will go all the way around until our leg is fully finished. So I would suggest that you count your slip stitches at least once in a while, just to make sure that you don't lose any. Once you finish, chain 1, turn, skip that chain 1, and into the next stitch into the back loop, make your slip stitches. Once you finish them all, if you need to, mark your stitch. I do not need that. Make 2 slip stitches. So 1 and 2. Turn, yarn in front, skip the 2 slip stitches that you have just made into the 3rd one, into the back loop, and so on. So keep going. I will see you when we go all the way around, and I'll meet you right here. Okay, so I am finishing. Now I have used up all of the stitches that I had. I came up and down, and the only place right now that I have to connect is this stitch underneath where we have started the chains. So I have used all of my full 30 stitches that I had left. So then you connect in right underneath where your chains were starting with a slip stitch, and now it is completely your choice. You can leave yourself a longer tail and sew these 2 sides together, or you can slip stitch it together like me. I think sewing is a little bit easier, but I prefer this way. So we're gonna use the leftover chains right here, the other side of the chains that we have not used. So I'm gonna go into the chain side first, and then I'm gonna go in to the middle of the first stitch. So this is the slip stitch that I have used to slip stitch it together. So starting with the other one, right, I'm just catching that front loop, and in I go. So just like that, and slip stitch into the next one, and on the other side again I'm gonna go sort of right into that stitch and just catch the front loop, and slip stitch into the next one and into the next one, and next and next, and just like that all the way up to the top. Now it is kind of easy to accidentally miss a stitch on this side, maybe even a stitch on that side. So once we're getting closer to the top, we kind of need to make sure that we have the same number on both sides, so at least the very end of it is straight. So let's see what I have here. So I have 1 2 3 4 5 6, and what I have here 1 2 3 4 5 6. So actually I have correctly, but if let's say you have less stitches here and more right here, so what you're gonna do, you're just gonna skip 1 stitch and connect it into the next one, so you have the last same stitches, the same amount of stitches at least at the end. So it looks nice and neat at the very end of that leg. Okay, 2 more and 1 more. So the very last one is at the very top right here, and at the top right here. Now I'm gonna chain 1. It's really kind of unnoticeable after you connect it this way. I'm gonna cut my yarn now because oops, so right here, so it doesn't really have a very good knot, so we want to hide this as soon as possible so it doesn't come undone. So I'm gonna go from the back to the front. I'm gonna hold that loop with my finger and go into the loop and pull tight, and now I have a knot. And then I'm just gonna hide the tail a little in between the stitches right here. And done. Now I have my both legs done. You probably only have one, so you need to do the exact same thing on the other side. So like this. So this should be, it's really nice shape. I like it. Okay, so next up, so you do your other leg. Okay, so exactly the same. Make sure that your clusters align so you can see these nice lines everywhere. And we are on to the sleeves then. So the sleeves are easier. It's technically the same as the leg, only we do not do any decreasing. Okay, so whatever number of stitches we have, we just keep that. And it should be an even number of stitches. It's a little different with the length of the sleeve. So we actually have the length that it should be. So for 3 to 6 months, it's 15 centimeters in length. So we measure from underneath the arm, so like this. Again, it's approximately, I ended up with approximately 16 centimeters, but I can easily move that up and I am at 15. So exactly the same. So you know the full length, you just leave 4 or 5 last centimeters for the ribbing. And I'm just gonna show you the first row of where we start. So I'm gonna take that out. We're gonna find that chain 1 that we have underneath the armhole. Okay, so this is the chain 1. I'm gonna put my slip knot, chain 1, and start single crochets. Now it is important to count your single crochets, at least in the very first row, just to make sure that you have an even number and that both sleeves are gonna have the same number of single crochets. So chain 1, single crochet back into that same stitch, that is 1, then 2, then 3, and after that we have our stitches. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, I need 28, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and my last one. So this is where we have connected this gap right here, and it's 28, and then we connect into the very first stitch with a slip stitch, chain 1, and the rest is the same. So we start with a single crochet right and back into that same stitch under the chain 1, and then a cluster, single crochet and cluster. Now at the sleeve, our clusters should just fall into place correctly. Actually, it does not. Yes, it does. It does. Yes. So we can see in the line. It does fall in the line. Just in case it does not, again, you can move one stitch forward, and then when you come back, you put the last stitch into the stitch that you have moved from. Okay. So again, just make sure that these are aligned. I'm not going to show anymore. Just keep going until you are approximately 4 or 5 centimeters away, and then the exact same ribbing. So I will leave you to do the sleeves yourselves, because it is exactly the same apart from the decreasing part, because they are not that as wide as the legs were. So keep going. I see you when you have your sleeves finished, and we will start on the hood. Okay, so the sleeves are done. I have both legs, so I'm only missing the hood, and it is quite easy to make. Grab your yarn, and we're going to attach on this side right here, so on the left side. Make a slip knot, and we're just going to do single crochet. So we're gonna use the leftover chains from where we have started. So if you look just above each single crochet, you have a little hole, and this is where we are going to put our hook in. So this is the very first one. I'm gonna attach, chain one, and start my single crochet. So single crochet back into that same stitch, and then one single crochet into each. Now we need to do a little bit of increasing, just a very small bit, and we are going to do that at the back. So for now, just one single crochet into each leftover chain. So just like that. Now when you are coming to the back part, you can see this is where the corner was. Okay, so this is where we want to do a little bit of increasing. So not a whole lot, but make sure that you keep that for increasing. So once you come to your first corner stitch right here, we're going to put 3 single crochets in there. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so this is the back part, the back corner. Then we continue on with 1 single crochet into each stitch until we get to the next one. So I can already see this is my other one. And again, 3 single crochets. 1, 2, and 3. So the 2 increases are at the back here. Okay, 1 here and 1 here. Then we finish off with 1 single crochet to the very end. So keep going, I'll see you right here. Once you finish that, you're going to chain 1 and turn. Now we are going to start with 5 back loop single crochet. So just as we did right here, where our buttonholes are going to be. So into the first one, into the back loop. 1 into the back loop. 2 back loop. 3, 4, and 5. After this, we continue as normal with our clusters. Yarn over into the full next stitch, your first cluster, and single crochet, and cluster, and single crochet, and so on. You keep going. I have my yarn all tangled. I need to fix that. So you keep going, like swapping those 2 around until you have 5 or 6 stitches left. Now I'm going to tell you why. So you want to finish with a cluster, and then technically we want 5 single crochets to do the back loop, okay, to match. But just in case you might have skipped a stitch somewhere and you might have an even number of stitches, then you can just finish with 6. You will not be able to see that afterwards, I promise you, because we're gonna start increasing, making our ribbing longer and longer for the hood. So for now, keep going. I'll see you at the end with a cluster stitch, and we will have 5 or 6 single crochets left. Okay, so right here at the end, we want to finish with a cluster and then have 5 single crochets left. So count from the back 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is supposed to be a cluster for me, and it's perfect. I did not lose any stitches. Now, just in case it is not working out for you and you have you need to do a cluster but you have 6 stitches left after that, so this is what you're going to do. You're gonna yarn over and make the cluster into 2 stitches. Okay, so you're gonna go into 1 stitch halfway through and then into the next one. Okay, and then you should have 5 stitches left. Now, because I am excuse me, I have the correct amount of stitches, I'm just gonna make my normal cluster and then finish my last 5 into the back loop. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Chain 1 and turn. Now our ribbing is gonna get longer and longer, so this is the first time that we are going to increase our ribbing right here. So instead of doing 5 back loop single crochets, we're gonna do 7 this time. So starting from the first one into the back loop, 1 single crochet into the back loop, 2nd back loop, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 2 more, 6th and 7th. So we made it a little bit longer. Okay, so this was 5, now it's 7. Then continue with single crochets into both loops until you're gonna have 7 stitches left at the back of this row, at the end of this row. So keep going. I'll see you when we have 7 stitches left. So finishing this row, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches left, and I start my single crochets into the back loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Chain 1 and turn, and we will start with 7 back loop single crochets again. So starting from the first one into the back loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the next stitch is a cluster. So into a full stitch, cluster, single crochet, cluster, single crochet, and keep going again until we have 7 stitches left at the end of this row. Okay, so I finished with a cluster and I have 7 stitches left into the back loop, 7 single crochets, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Chain 1 and turn. Now we are gonna turn the 7 into 9, and we will stop at 9. Okay, so no more, just we had 5, 7, and now 9. Into the back loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, into the back loop, 8, and 9. Now if you have difficulty spotting where your ribbing starts, you can take a little stitch marker and mark your last back loop single crochet, so then when you're coming around you know where you need to start your 9 back loop single crochets, whatever makes it easier for you. Okay, so once you make the 9, you keep going with normal single crochets until you have 9 stitches left at the end of this row. 9 stitches left. So into the back loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So from now on, we change nothing until we get very, very close to the top. Now I'm going to talk about that in a second. Just want to make sure that you know that, well, probably know that we crochet those first 9 and last 9 into the back loop, and it's single crochets. Everything in between is the same as we have done here. Okay, so you start with a cluster, single crochet cluster. So after you do the ribbing, you're gonna have cluster first, and then you're gonna have a cluster and the ribbing. So it starts with a cluster and it finishes with a cluster. The single crochets are normal. So I'm pretty sure that you are very familiar with this pattern by now, with these stitches. So I will leave you to it. You can do it yourself. Now let's talk about the length and what we want to do at the top of the hood. Okay, so first of all, let's look up the height of the hood. So this is the F, the very last measurement. So for me, 3 to 6 months, approximately 22 centimeters in height. Now I will be measuring from the row where I have started, and at the moment I have approximately 6 centimeters, maybe 5 centimeters in length. So I have another 17 centimeters to go. Now this is what I want to do at the top of the hood. Okay, so if you look right here, what I have made, I have this nice and smooth here. Instead of having the very square end of the hood, I am going to smooth it out. Now you don't have to do this if you're gonna find it difficult or you just don't want to do it. You can just go all the way up to the top to the full length and then just sew it together or slip stitch it together. But if you want to have your back of the hood like mine, this is what we are going to do. We're going to measure out 4 rows. Okay, so how long are 4 rows? So single crochet row, cluster, single crochet, and cluster. So this is all I have on this side. I measure this out and it is approximately 5 centimeters in length, the 4 rows when I measure them. Okay, so we need to stop when we are approximately 5 centimeters away from finishing our full length. We need to stop, and then I'm going to show you what to do, how we are going to do the decreasing to get this this end of the hood like that. Okay, so if my full length is 22 centimeters and the 4 rows make up 5 centimeters, I'm gonna stop at 17 centimeters in length, and the last 5 are going to be with increasing and to get that smooth end. So again, so I need to keep going for another 12 centimeters or so and then decreasing. So for now, keep going. I'll see you when I'm almost at the top. Okay, so I'm approximately 4 rows before finishing my hood, approximately 5 centimeters until I get to my full length. Again, remember, just measure out 4 rows, whatever they make up, you minus from the full length. Okay, so let's see. Lengthwise, it's approximately 17.5, so I'm a little bit over. Now you need to make sure that before you do the decreasing that you are finished with a cluster row, because we need to do the decreasing with the single crochets. Now before we start, we need to find the very middle stitch in our hood. You can count your stitches and then place your stitch marker in there. So what I do, I count my clusters because they are easier to see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So I divide that into 2. That is 10 clusters to each side from the middle stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So in between, right here is my middle stitch. Okay, so if you have an odd number of clusters, you will have a cluster stitch as your middle. Okay, whatever way you want to find that middle, completely up to you. This is how I do it. And now we start the row as normal with single crochets, and we stop when we get to the last 4 stitches before the stitch marker. So just as usual, we still keep our back loop single crochets, 9 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Keep going. I'll see you when we have 4 stitches left. Now I am 4 stitches before my stitch marker. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're gonna crochet 2 single crochets together twice. So into the next one, that is 1, next stitch, and another one, that is 2. Now the next stitch is a stitch marker, so we make a normal single crochet in there, and we put a stitch marker back into that stitch from the single crochet. We still need to know where that middle is. And after the stitch marker, again 2 single crochets together twice. So into the next stitch, into the next one, that is 1, and 1 more. Then continue as usual with normal single crochets. Finish off your ribbing, start the next row, and I'm gonna see you right here. Okay, so I got to the stitch marker. I'm going to take it out. Now the only thing why I'm showing this here is whatever stitch you make into that stitch that was marked, you need to mark again. It was a single crochet for me, so I mark back that stitch again. Like I said, we are still going to need that very middle stitch once more. So finish this row, and we will do again decreasing in the next one, just like we did right now. I will show it just to make sure you know what to do. And I'm again 4 stitches before the stitch marker, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm gonna crochet 2 at a time together. 2 single crochets together once, and 2 single crochet together twice. Now we don't need that anymore. We just put a single crochet where the stitch marker was, and then again exactly the same on the other side. 2 single crochets together once, and 2 single crochets together twice, and we are done. We need 1 more row to go on top, so just finish that one and do the cluster row, and then we will see how to join. And if you look at your hood on the side right now, so you see how much of the corner we took away. Okay, so let's finish this row and a cluster row, and we are all done. We will be able to connect. Okay, and so I'm finished. The last row for me is the cluster row, and I will just make sure that I did reach the 22 centimeters that I need, and is actually exactly 22. Now if you think that you're missing a little bit of length, you can always add another row of single crochets and finish on that row, or even 2 more rows. You're still that corner is not gonna come back. Okay, so if you feel that you need it a little bit longer, just make it a little bit longer, but I am perfectly happy with the length that I have, so now I can connect. Okay, so again, we want to connect from the inside, and whatever you decide, if you can sew it up or slip stitch it together. I will be slip stitching it. So I need first of all to connect the 2 fronts, and I'm gonna chain 1, and I'm just gonna go into a stitch from one side and stitch on the other side and slip stitch. So just like that. And I can feel that I have started on my clusters now. You can see the cluster stitches for me are much bigger than the single crochet ones. These are the single crochet. And I'm going to try to match them. And my last stitch, I'm gonna chain one and cut. It's actually always a good idea to check before you cut first. I'm gonna pull that out, and here you go. You wouldn't even be able to tell where the seam is. It just looks really, really nice. And pull back. Just like that, and we have a hood. Now the next step would probably be to get rid of the tails if you have any left. I just have maybe 2 or 3 around, so again, especially where you did the slip stitches, you want to make a knot. I'm gonna keep the loop into the loop and pull, and then I'm just gonna hide it in between the stitches. And done. Get that. Now don't forget, you might have some tails on the inside. This is the one where I have connected the body. Again, it doesn't have a knot, so make sure it's tight and in between the stitches. And cut. And I have 2 more, so I will do it off camera. And then what I'm going to do is I'm gonna sew in my buttons. I'm just gonna match the rows from one side to another, so I can see that these match. So right here is going to be a button. So sew in your buttons, and I will see you after that. Okay, so here we are. I have my buttons in. Now there's one last thing that I can show you what to do. So with the hood, so now at this moment it's just flapping around. Now if you want to secure it, what I would say, I just have some of the tails left. Now you don't have to use tails if you don't have them, so you just need a tiny little piece of yarn. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find 2 spots on the sides. So let's say one here and one here. Just make sure before that you like the way it's lying down. Okay, so let's say approximately here I'm gonna make a stitch onto the hood and then onto that ribbing, so just like that. And now they're gonna hold on, they're not gonna be falling forward. And I'm just gonna make a simple knot, and I'm gonna cut those tails. So my tails have smaller tails now, and one more on the other side. Okay, so again, make sure that it's nice and even. So approximately here, I'm gonna go into the hood and into the ribbing. and just make a knot and cut. And here we are. So now my onesie or jumpsuit or bodysuit is finished. So this is how it looks like. It's quite big. It doesn't really want to fit on my table. So I really like it. It's very nice. It's kind of warm. It's interesting pattern, and it has a great shape. Now, hopefully everything worked out for you. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.